New for 96. With your hosts, Kevin McCauley and Chris Nguyen.
Well, welcome to another episode of
New for 96.
Oh, that's
Hello,
terrible.
Christopher.
Hello, Kevin.
What do we have down here today, down under?
So, being the sensitive Americans that we are, we have a special guest today. Jordan, why don't you introduce yourself?
G'day, guys. I'll show them how it's done.
Okay, you don't have to do the voice anymore. Talk normal now.
Yeah, that'd be rough to put on the whole way through. Yeah, I'm Jordan. I'm from Australia. Own a Porsche shop here in town, and good friends with Kevin and Chris.
Modern Aircooled. Both modern and air-cooled.
air-cooled.
Yeah.
Potentially, at the moment, it's water cooled with the humidity rolling through.
Yeah.
It isn't an air-conditioned shed.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a very nice shed, though. It's very large.
Yeah, spacious.
Yeah. It looks like they used to make windows there.
They did indeed. The salmon pink walls
Yes.
give it away, or just the horribly tacky window
Or
frames.
that every single window is literally a different window.
I never
know.
even noticed that.
And I have just enough OCD that it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
I get reminded I want to put more holes on the wall to fill with the windows.
Yep. Also, do you ever go up into that balcony area? Is that the makeout
There's
mezzanine?
There's actually a secret jacuzzi there.
Oh my god.
It's an old trash bag full
Okay.
of 914 parts. And you
Amazing.
sweat.
Yeah.
And you fill it up.
I thought maybe that was just where the oil from oil changes goes.
There is some stuff up there. It is the detritus of a shop. I mean, you'll find all sorts of weird and wonderful things. None of them useful, and that's why they're still there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can see bumpers and stuff from the
The big thing
street
is
level.
factory exhaust systems. You know,
Oh, yeah.
if you get rear-ended in a 911, you got to
Yeah.
replace your exhaust system. The insurance company's paying
Yeah.
thousands for it. You buy an X-Pipe from us, you give us your old muffler and say,
Yeah.
hey, sell it if you can. We go, nah, we'll scrap it eventually.
Mhm.
My
They're
god.
not worth anything at all.
Yeah. So it's just up there.
It just floats around.
Okay. So now, do you have like a storage system for parts, or is it just wherever there is space?
So, yep. We really try and keep the exhaust together.
Yeah.
We try and keep, components from various cars together, but, engine blocks and cranks and things like that we know they're not worth anything. We know we can't reuse them, and we know that we really don't feel like we should throw them away.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is the beating heart of an engine for a while.
Of course.
And so it just kind of sits there lumped, and, honestly, it's a really useful graveyard for here's one I prepared earlier.
Yeah.
I get to show someone, well, this is what happens when your oil clearances are a bit too tight in your
Yeah.
Cayman. This is the hole that it made.
Yep.
This is what happened to you, unfortunately.
Yep.
And that's kind of what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, it's interesting. The broken parts, they're not worth anything, but they can start really telling a story about
Yeah.
what happened
Sure.
to particular vehicles. And like I said, you just don't feel like it's something you want to discard.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's great being able to show someone, like, what a porous block looks like on a 996 or a D-chunk or whatever, like that, all the forum myths, which are actually true.
Or you have a gallery of IMS bearings.
Yeah,
What I prefer is when I can show the forum myths that aren't true.
yeah,
That's usually a lot nicer.
Give us an example.
The big one that I've found, and I know it has happened, but I personally have never met anyone who's really met anyone that I've confirmed to know had an IMS bearing fail in a car built after 2004.
really?
Oh,
So there is that potential for the late 04, 05 builds. You're going to your 997s and your 987s.
Yep.
But I personally don't tell people to worry about it.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a failure potential there, but it's such a rare occurrence that I haven't seen it.
yeah,
I haven't been doing this for that long,
yeah,
and there are certainly more cars in America than I ever experienced back in Australia.
sure.
But that's a big one for me.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's huge. I mean, and people worry about those bearings.
they do. I mean, it is like the signature characteristic of a 996. Anyone, if you mention a 996, you're going to say you're going to buy one, you're looking at one, or someone's looking at one, they're going to, some dumb idiot's going to be like, hey, they have this bearing thing.
But by 05, they had upgraded the design like two times.
06.
But they had upgraded it a couple times.
So using simply your model year production date doesn't necessarily tell the full story.
Yeah.
For example, we have a one owner 2000 Boxster, 40,000 miles base.
Is this back in Australia?
No, this is here in the shop at the moment. That we're working on, and it's the silver with the red.
Oh yeah,
I mean it is the perfect base Boxster.
Special edition.
I'm in love with it. One owner.
Oh no, the base one. Yeah, sorry.
Yep. But he didn't know about the bearing, and it's a low mileage car, so we're going after it. And what we have to do is we order both types of bearings, the single row replacement and the double row replacement, because we don't know which bearing we're going to pull out and then have to replace until we get to it, which is expensive because we have to order both bearings and then hopefully try and return one or use it later on.
Yeah.
Because there isn't really a rhyme or reason. Now, the gurus of this, your Jake Rabies of the world, I'm sure they have a very well-educated guess. They're not sharing it with us because they're selling us both bearings both times.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. Like when I was doing my search for like a 996 or 997, like how rabid the forums get, and then he is just so heavily attacked for being like a shill of his own products and just the whole like IMS failure phenomenon, I guess.
But this is a big thing, probably more on the industry side that a lot of, consumers and enthusiasts might not necessarily deal with. I have a very pretty, friendly face.
Yep.
Very personal.
It's very pretty. It's very nice.
I like talking to the customers and clients. Now, when I call certain vendors, Ellen Engineering, Jake Gravy being one, or if I call someone like Griffiths who do like AC components upgrading on Aircooled cars, which you all know, Kevin, they're so grumpy.
Yep.
We're wasting their time by asking them any questions. We should know the answer. But I do absolutely trust what they send me.
Yep.
And they are really good at it. And Jake Gravy called when the GT4 was released. We're going to see issues with this engine. Now, 3 years later, we're starting to see issues with those engines.
What are those issues?
Again, similar bore and cylinder sleeve issues. Just from, the natural wear and tear that you put into them.
Yeah.
He called it. He was right. I mean,
but
he was.
That's
GT4
crazy.
doesn't
Wait.
have like a special. It's not a particularly special engine. It's kind of like a base Carrera engine. Is that?
Yeah,
That's an oversimplifying, I'm sure.
it's not something that he basically threw out the prediction, and there are some closed Facebook groups for Porsche shop technicians and owners that we have where we talk about engine failures. It's pretty depressing to see 3 or 4 blown up engines a day.
That's insane.
Wow.
But that being said, we're talking America wide of every car ever made. It's still so few.
If I'm honest, I like anything 987, 997.2 and newer, I figured was just basically indestructible at this point.
More or less.
Wait, is GT4 off the top of my head? I don't. It's not Metzger.
No. It's the same 9A architecture that you did have in your 991.
Yeah.
But the same as the 991 Turbo, the 991 GT3.
Yep.
They're all modified variants of the later engine. Now, they are the only engines that don't have an IMS bearing.
Yep.
The Mezger motors have an IMS bearing.
Oh, yeah.
And I love winding people up about that because, as I said, by the Turbo, it doesn't have the bearing.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have the bearing problem.
Right.
Yep.
Nor do the 05s.
Yeah.
Really in terms of actual experience.
Yeah.
They don't. So that's why I equate those two together, which is funny.
I mean, like,
That's really funny.
I also remember when the 9A1 engines first rolled out, people were saying, like, well, the point of failure is going to be carbon buildup, and eventually that will be an issue, and etc.
They got really lucky. I mean, I had an N54 engine in a BMW 335i when I first moved over here. Classic, the talk of the walnut meteor and the blasting, and I did do that. I went and looked at them, and they were disgusting.
Oh, man.
We're not seeing that on the Porsche engines for whatever reason. Porsche worked it out. They've just got a better air oil separator system.
Yeah.
It's all about your crankcase ventilation, how you separate it, which is funny because the previous gen, the air oil separators blow like crazy.
Yeah, you just get like plumes of smoke from behind, and suddenly, like, but that was I used to be an encyclopedia of knowledge about like everything to look out for a 996, and that was one of those things as well. But that is very interesting about the GT4. I would have never figured that.
Yeah. Well, we didn't bring you here to talk
Yeah,
Porsche
wait.
tech support.
Well, yeah, this is true. So, Jordan, let's rewind the tape a little bit. So how did you get into working on Porsches?
So, I mean, it was always a childhood passion, never anything I intended to do.
Mhm.
You know, I went through... The biggest thing was that my dad would always say to my grandmother, when I grow up, I want to be a beach bum with a Porsche.
Amazing.
And that's all he wanted. Go surfing, go sailing, drive a 930 around.
Yep.
That's all he ever wanted to do. You know, my dad grew up in a pretty working class family in Adelaide in South Australia.
Mm.
You know, my grandfather emigrated from Europe after the war. The whole, you know, regular coming to America, but not America story.
Sure.
So not as good.
No. Well, and so, you know, he's had to really, really work to get to the point where he could start affording the cars that were his childhood dream. And along the way, he was silly enough to have a family, and we crushed that dream very quickly. My sister and I were very expensive. And so all I ever had as a kid were his models, and that's what I could play with. I couldn't drive a car if he had it. He probably wouldn't let me near it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where the passion was from. And I had two books that I got from him at an early age. One was a Smithsonian Air and Space Museum catalog.
Mhm.
So I adore the Blackbird. There was a Blackbird on the cover.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
the coolest thing
cool.
ever built
Yeah,
by people
absolutely.
in my
Yeah.
mind. The other one was a really, really interesting book on the history of Porsche that was written in the late 80s, very early 90s. And a very dedicated and complete history.
Yep.
My favorite thing about the book was the kind of the epilogue. You know, where's Porsche going in the future?
Yeah.
They're phasing out the 911. The 928 is going to be the car of the future.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff. But it was also written when Porsche were winning Le Mans. You know, when the 962 was dominant, they were developing, you know, various versions of the Mezca for the GT1. That was all kind of in the wings. And so that's how I learned about cars.
Sure.
I had a book about planes, and all planes with a Blackbird.
Yep.
And I had a book about cars, and all cars with a 962.
Yeah.
That was what they were. And then I started go-karting. And that's what I thought cars felt like.
Yeah.
You know, and then by the time I was able to sort of learn to drive at, you know, 17, 18 years of age in Australia, my dad had finally got a Boxster.
Yeah.
And so I had a 986 Boxster S to kind of learn to drive in.
Oh,
and I'm
nice.
like, well, this is just like the go-kart. It's just like what I remember as a kid.
Manual.
Manual,
Nice.
seal grey. Just
Ooh. Good
I can tell you, I mean,
mine.
it is the
Yeah.
perfect spec. If I can ever find that car again,
Yeah.
I'll buy it. And that's kind of it. You know, that's what I thought cars were like. That's what I thought they looked like, sounded like, drove like go-karts, all the fun.
Yeah.
And then I had to sit my driving test to get, you know, from my learner's license to my provisional license. And I had to do it in some kind of Toyota hatchback.
Yeah.
And I went, this sucks.
A little jelly bean car.
At least it was a manual car.
Yeah.
Because in Australia it is hugely embarrassing to sit your license in an automatic.
Oh, it's two different licenses or license designations, isn't it?
Yes, they put a big condition. You know, if you've got poor eyesight, you put a big condition. You know, you have to wear your contacts or your glasses. If you can't drive after dark, they put on you can't drive after dark. If you sit your test in an automatic, they put automatic only on your license. And now, of course, you're 18 when we get our licenses.
Yeah.
We're 18 when we can go out to the bar. So you're out with your friends, and every bouncer you show your ID to will just look at you and laugh. This is why we are so much more.
If you have
evil.
like basically this scarlet letter A on your license.
And that's how we all learn how to drive sticks
Wow.
in Australia. It's a good system. There's nothing like peer pressure and shame.
Seriously. I learned it at Toyota too. I was a Celica, 90s Celica with the quad lights was my driver's license car. So
We had a neon. It was
really
not great.
Oh no.
But then the people after me, the next year, like my best friend at the time, he did in a Camaro V6, which I
What?
thought was way better. But I think
I mean,
I think it was worse.
I mean, it was probably worse, but like as a kid, that probably seems so much
it
cooler.
seems so much
How did
cooler.
how did he do the reverse parallel park thing? Isn't that the running joke of those
Yeah.
early
He did.
Camaros?
He didn't. He still can't.
he's still there.
Yeah.
At the test spot.
So is it pretty difficult to is it expensive to get your license in Australia?
I mean, there are some things to be said for accessibility for families.
Mhm.
The quick run through of how we do our license.
Yep.
When you turn 16, you sit a pretty extensive exam.
Mm.
Between 16 and 18, you can only drive with a fully licensed driver of some relationship to you. You know, you can get away with uncles and aunties and things like that, but, you know, or you could do driving instructors, but you can't just, you know, pick up some guy at the liquor store and
Yeah.
go, hey, get in for 5 miles and sign it. There is a program where you have to do 120 hours of logged driving.
Okay. Oh, wow.
You log, you know, the registration,
Yeah.
the license plate, the license number of your learner's permit, the license number of the registered driver that was with you,
Yeah.
the conditions that you were driving in. You have to do 10% of that has to be nighttime driving.
Yep.
And of those, you know, you have to go through school zones, country roads, this, that, and, and you have to log 120 hours. When you have a family that doesn't have a car or a commute that kind of works,
Oh, yeah, that'd be hard.
I know friends that just are unable to complete that time.
Yeah.
Consequently, don't have licenses. But it is very extensive. And then I've had to sit my driver's test here in the States twice.
Yeah.
Laughably easy. And not only that,
So-
I mean,
I feel like I thought after 18 you didn't even need to take a driver's test. Like it's basically you age into it, or after.
No, I would hope
20.
not. Although that would explain
It explains
a lot.
a lot.
So would you say that drivers are better in Australia, which I would believe to be true, anywhere else in the world, honestly?
So, you know, Australia has roughly the same number of people as Texas.
Yep.
Our road toll is about a tenth.
Okay.
You know, 10 times as many people die sort of in Houston's area than in Australia combined.
Sure.
Every year.
Wow.
A lot of that comes down to space.
Yeah.
I mean, kangaroos aren't as big as deer. Some
Fewer
of them are really buff. I mean, there are more fatalities in kangaroo accidents because the kangaroo punched the driver.
Oh,
I've seen
my
some of
God.
those- I've
Well,
seen
'cause
some of
when
those ripped kangaroos.
Because when you're drunk, also when that kangaroo is looking at you weird,
they have more strength to fight back.
They do.
Don't you know things?
They do. Also, there are fewer Mustangs in Australia, although there are more Holdens.
We're
So
starting to bring them in, and actually, you'd be surprised at the number of Corvettes and old Mustangs that are left. They're the R32 Skyliner import.
So,
You know what there's that C3 Corvette that, you know what I'm talking about? It was in Fury Road. But it's like the C3 wasn't officially imported, so a Australian entrepreneur imported the bodies and stretched them over a truck frame. And so it's this like
wait,
cartoonish.
really?
Yeah, I don't know the name because I'm an idiot, but I'll put it in the show notes.
Hilarious.
It'll be in the notes, but it's like it looks like a C3 Corvette that's like 8 feet longer.
Wow.
And cartoonish proportions. It's amazing.
You could fill an entire podcast with wacky Australian kit cars.
I mean,
that's
yeah,
Like fiberglass. I mean, sure, you
Or-
could with America as well,
or
but
just cars that are like the Holden Commodore Ute is, I think, a favorite car of mine.
I
Like,
saw one in Joshua Tree.
did you really?
Like,
oh,
just
yeah,
outside
you
Joshua
said that
Tree a couple
picture.
years ago.
How is that even here?
There's
Maybe an extensive G8 conversion.
there's
maybe.
a company in Colorado that imports them and flips it
Oh,
over.
great,
Ah.
great
But
markets. then.
you're paying $130,000 US
That's
dollars
insane for that.
a $20,000
Yeah.
Ute.
But I was thinking of actually, was it the Commodore? No, it was a Monaro, wasn't it?
The Monaro is what you had here is that
GTO.
Pontiac.
The GTO. Yeah.
But that was a bastardization of a famous nameplate. of
Yeah.
course, even back home. The Chevy SS, I considered buying one as a daily.
Those are
because
good.
I do have a real soft spot for the
Yeah.
car. I mean, they're
I
great.
like those.
There was one at the I did the PCA car control school like
with Jim Hedrick and his
couple weeks
crazy
ago.
Boxster.
No, he does the autocross. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
This was at the car control school, but there was a guy who had a G8 that was like, we chatted, and he actually had his shirt was like the Montrose Gun Club, and I was like,
What?
that's kind of an oxymoron.
Oh, no kidding.
But he was really friendly, and his he had a G8, and he's like, yeah, and he said it had like, yeah, it's got like 570, 600 horsepower because it had a supercharger, and it sounded so cool.
Wow.
I mean, because you could hear, I'd be in another group, and I would hear him like hammer it, and it would just wind
SS
up.
is cool. Like, I'd have a G8 too, because that's even. It's not like as a car company that doesn't even exist anymore.
So there are three particular standouts in
Yeah.
that category for me. You've got the old Kingswood Ute, which is the classic Kingswood. You know, it's the old big sedan. They had the Utes, the flat trays, they're always stained wood. They're really nice. and that's your 3 on the tree.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
GM small block V8. That's it, kind of thing.
Yep.
And then you've got your HSV Maloo. The Maloo is the fast U, and you could have the supercharged version from the factory. And what's nice is all of these in the horsepower was they put the kilowatt rating on the back of the tail. That was a model number. So you had your 317 kilowatt version. Different. But then the one that I would probably have,
that's preferable to all the car numbers we have today.
That's it. And if you got any other Australian viewers, approximately half of them are now going to fight you. The one that I would probably pick is the Typhoon, which is the Ford Performance version of their Ute, but not the Super Pursuit, which had the V8. That was the Maloo competitor.
Yeah.
The Typhoon had the Barra, the iron 4-liter straight 6 with a big turbo on it.
So cool.
And they were mentally fast.
Wow.
And that was, it's another one of these cast iron straight 6s.
Yeah.
Just put a bigger turbo on it. Put another one.
What I like is that Australia has like this crazy car culture that will fuel these crazy cars, because to say the rest of Europe, Australia is like the South. Like you guys are the farmers of
technically prisoners,
if you will, yeah. But that is amazing though. Like, and there's so many cool cars that come like that are Australian spec. And which is amazing because it's such a small country.
And Mazda had those ARC-7, like Bathurst editions. I know the R32 was huge.
But even your mini rotary Mazdas, your ARC-2s and ARC-3s and all the smaller, and you get those, and they're 8 or 9 second cars at the quarter mile. They don't shift. They don't have to shift. They just launch and go.
Yeah.
We've long had pretty unique variants. A big one was, we're the highest per capita consumer of AMG products in the world. It's something like 20-30% of all Mercedes-Benz products sold in Australia.
Now, there's a company with numbers on the back of the car that makes sense.
Yeah. We're an AMG variant of that particular product.
Yeah.
And because we're right-hand drive, the 4MATIC that came standard in all the S versions wouldn't work. So Mercedes were building special rear-wheel drive only S variant AMGs for the Australian market.
Oh, that's amazing.
That is amazing.
Because that's what your tires need.
I haven't thought 4MATIC referred to its 4-speed transmission automatic. But
4-speed
automatic. Who's to say? We may never know.
Kevin loves to say that, but mainly in the presence of Daniel Golson, who is an internet person.
Yeah.
Who is...
He's terrible. He won't hear this. So I can say that.
But no, that is interesting though.
So fast forward to us you got to America.
Yep.
And then you, from what we talked about, you studied and you went to school for technician school to learn how to work on cars.
You worked for another shop as well?
Yeah, so we'll take one half step back. When I first got here, the reason I came in the beginning was that, we were talking about all these wonderful Australian cars, and it was their downfall that led me to get on a plane. GM and Ford basically pulled the plug on our entire industry. I was studying automotive engineering at university, and I was going to graduate and compete not only with my class, but everyone who's ever done it in Australia at the time, when all the jobs just disappeared. And, I could have gone for the Hollywood thing, what you were talking about in a previous episode, walking through the back lot.
Yep.
Hey, you there, you're my next star.
Yeah.
I could have tried to do that and get the gig, and I had friends that do that, and they live in Detroit now and work for the big three.
Yeah.
That's not really for me. I want to do my own thing in my own way. And so I came over here, went to UTI, a technical school, which is is the first time I've really experienced for-profit education.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I made the most of it. I actually learned a lot. There was some very interesting kids in my class that I really wondered what they're doing.
I was actually there 2 days ago.
Oh, wow.
Doing some photos of some instructors.
It's a mausoleum at times.
Yep. You imagine if you'd gone to like the Hennessy School of Mechanical whatever.
You know what? I'd either be really rich or have gone down the road of Gembala.
Yep.
And ended up in South Africa in a ditch.
Yeah.
They're... I read Jalopnik. I'd stay away from them.
Yeah.
So I went to the technical school. I actually did learn a lot, and I was trying to figure out some immigration things at the time.
Can I ask, did your upbringing, did your father know how to work on cars? Was he...
No, he's an engineer. He's a chemical engineer. He'll build you a modular gas plant for shale gas production anywhere in the world. He is quite handy. He can put stuff together, but not car handy. You know, the best thing about him that I can say is when he was tracking his 997 that he had here, he engineered his way through the corner. The instructor said, all right, when you want to brake here, brake in a straight line, then you want to turn in, then you want to hit the apex, you want to get on the gas, you want to go out wide, you want to hit this, part, set up the next corner. And Dad's an engineer, so he thinks about that as a process. So he gets there the next lap and he thinks through all the steps before he gets there.
Sure, yeah.
And then he does every step half a second too late. And that's why he was
he's still thinking
the apex and he's throwing himself through the corner and the instructor. And so I'm not really like that. I find it very natural and intuitive. I play with Lego and I just kind of built. I didn't have the schematic. I just kind of built. And that's a subtle difference between us. That's why I think I'm a little bit more towards physically doing that sort of work. So yeah, I went to the school, really loved it because I'd read about this stuff for years and years and years. I knew all the concepts, but this was actually how it nuts and bolts goes together, and it filled in a lot of the mistakes I made when I was younger playing with cheap cars, wondering why they caught fire and blew up. And then I went to the Mercedes-Benz college on the same campus, and that's where I got all my major certifications. And by the time that was done, the immigration problem had lent an answer, which is I could only stay in the States if I owned the company I worked for. In the meantime, I'd been going to PCA events, driving the car. I'd met a few people and, asked them, hey, where do you get your car worked on? And there was a smattering of answers all over the place, but not a real clear consensus. And then I said, well, I'll do it. I'll do it cheaper. Do it in my garage. Just don't tell the Homeland Security or social, whoever it is that's in charge of me not working at the time.
Yeah.
Was there ever a point where you were going to maybe continue down the Mercedes-Benz road, like work for a dealer or something, if the immigration had been different?
So absolutely. I topped my class in college. I graduated with a 4.0, 100% attendance, which is attendance is all they care about there, which is a little bit sad. All the awards and honors.
Everyone's paying so much to go.
Yeah, and so actually I'll go back to the big thing. I went to the Mercedes-Benz school because I had originally moved over here to go to the Porsche school.
Oh, interesting.
Which they have. So basically you do your core program and then you can diversify into different manufacturers. There's a BMW program, a Porsche program.
Is the Porsche program in Atlanta?
It is in Atlanta, and then there was a smaller one in Pennsylvania. And then there was 2 Mercedes programs, one in Florida, one here in Houston, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
The Porsche program, you have to get almost perfect marks to get in, sit an interview, show passion for the brand, things like that. So I did my year of dues, turned up on time every day, got 100% all the tests, that kind of thing. Went to the interview at the end, didn't talk about cars once. They looked at my grade. We got along well. We're talking about the Great Barrier Reef and how it's disappearing because of some cars and cow farts, I guess. And then at the end of it, they said, well, we'd love to have you. What's your immigration status? And that's when I had the biggest internal tantrum I've ever had without externally showing it. I surprised I didn't spurt blood at them in some Monty Python-esque, live organ donation fashion, because that was kind of all I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And the reason is so when you go to the Porsche program, Porsche themselves pay, and then after that you're obligated to work off your debt for a term of a year to 2 years in a dealership, and you're guaranteed a job, you're guaranteed a decent wage. It's actually a really good path of getting in there. But because of certain immigration things, I couldn't accept a guaranteed job, and it was kind of a juggling action where I had to be holding on to both things at once, but you couldn't. And so that's where I went to Mercedes. Mercedes I had to pay again, but they would happily take me because they were taking my money. They didn't need me to work after that. And so that was it. So at that stage of my life, I knew I wanted to work with Porsche. I love Mercedes. My favorite car I've made is the 540K, the Roadster from the late 30s.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think any people have ever made anything better than that. But yeah, and that's kind of where I went to Mercedes. So I never really intended to go that way, but when I graduated, I did have a number of offers. And big dealerships, like I was talking to Sewell and said, look, if you can find a way to get me a job, I'll come work for you. And it wasn't to be. Ultimately, I had to own the company I worked for. and that's kind of where things fell into place for me.
That's very American dreamy in that, like,
It really is.
yeah. Like,
Um,
in order to stay here, you had to create your own company, and you did. And that begat Modern Aircooled.
That's the thing. I mean, I'm exceptionally fortunate that nothing could have worked out any other way, and led to a result where I'm sitting here relatively happy. It could not have gone any other way at every point, and I was forced to make those decisions. Because again, I'm still daunted by the prospect of running a business. It's not something I would have naturally done.
Sure.
I feel like that I've been pushed into it. I'm learning, and I'm feeling a lot more comfortable now. It's nice.
Running a business is terrible.
Yeah.
I hate it. But ultimately, like, sometimes you're kind of forced into it, and it is what it is.
So while you were doing kind of like garage projects, kind of doing garage repairs and everything,
That's right.
was that when you were working with Driver Source? At the same time?
That was the loophole, wasn't it? I couldn't be paid to work, but I had time. I have a family that was able to support me and feed me and kind of keep me rolling around. So then I basically volunteered. My dad had his 997 service there. They'd done a good job, told me about all the amazing cars, and said, go and ask. And that was a big lesson. I learned so many big lessons working at Driver Source, just from how weird and wonderful Italian vehicles are.
Yeah. Oh, and
That was going to be one of my questions.
Driver Source, we should note, is this incredible. It's a dealership, but also a storage facility, also service shop. And if you've been on Bring a Trailer, you have seen some of their auctions, and it is a center of very interesting car activity.
They'll put a Stratos up for auction.
Yeah.
And
There was that Stratos.
It just turns up.
The Stratos, the last Stratos that was, I don't know if there's been more than one, but the Stratos that was on there was
Strati.
That's the only
if you
one.
will. Yeah, has been, was from Driver Source.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, I really got to experience a lot more broadly working there or interning there. Beginning sweeping the floors, handing over tools, just watching how...
Telling people like me, no, you're not supposed to go into the vault. Because I have gotten that lesson a couple times where I was just wandering around.
We've wandered into private, like, floors or whatever at the garage.
The vault of the vault.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And having relatively unfettered or, non-suspicious access was nice. I mean, even now, like, I'll go into my shop on a Sunday when it's quiet and just reflect on the cars being around me.
Yeah.
But that's it's a mecca.
Man.
Seeing
it's a museum.
Formula One chassis and all the supercars, and you have very clear lineage and DNA lined up. It's like certain sectioned areas are like mini car shows that just exist.
Yeah. That's what people don't realize too about like Houston, and not that there would be any reason that anyone would realize it, but there are a lot of very interesting and also very important cars that just reside here discreetly.
So one of the anecdotes that is unsubstantiated but unsurprising about that place, and is that certain founding members of the Vault are first name basis with the heads of Ferrari. I mean, they're some of the bigger Ferrari collectors. And, it was rumored that when a new car is released, they have a spec. It's just direct debited and sent to them, and if they don't want it, they sell it.
Yep.
It's just implied. I mean, it's put your credit card on file.
Yeah.
Wow.
With Ferrari.
Yeah, your Amex Centurion.
That's it. And, it was cool. I mean, this didn't happen, but it wasn't overly surprising.
Yeah.
You would know about a new unreleased Ferrari that was kind of on its way when part of the collection was shuffled over.
Oh, interesting.
Because they turned up, and that was my first foray into the world. I mean, and this
when you say shuffled over, you mean just repositioned, or you mean
they would leave a space?
Room made.
Yeah, it would leave one room and go into the regular collection with all the other supercars.
Yeah, the super special room is one guy's collection. I won't speculate about who, but I went in once, and it literally is like, here's 6 consecutive year Indy 500 winning
yeah.
chassis,
Was
2 Schumacher Formula One cars, a Veyron, a DBS,
Was that the one
McLaren
that
F1.
we saw? There was one where we went in. It was the first time I ever saw a 959.
That was that room.
It was that room. Yeah.
That
I was fortunate enough to be able to move that Veyron as part of my work duties. And I will tell you that at putting it into drive and letting the brake off and creeping from one side to another, it drives just like a Golf.
Of course.
It's just that you realize that underneath that gas pedal is 1,000 horsepower.
There is a tremendous amount, and I have a real thing for this, but valve train noise.
Yeah.
I love a good mechanical tick.
Yeah.
In my Miata, it's because it's a quart low in oil, and I think Miata only holds 3 quarts of oil. That's okay.
Yeah.
But the Veyron just sitting there, warming up and idling, there is a lot going on.
Wow.
Of those
I believe
valves.
it.
I would imagine,
I feel like your 986 Boxster S, I think there's a lot of valve clattering because when the top's up, you don't really hear intake or exhaust as much as just kind of valve train.
Yeah.
My overwhelming memory of that car, and then the main memory I remember is my dad driving it to get the spoiler to pop up, and me being a little kid jumping out of the seat to watch it go from the top down. Now, speeding is an egregious and heinous crime in Australia. It's punishable by death.
Oh my god.
So
Even in the Outback?
Yeah.
there is a de-restricted section of the highway, but you don't want to be going fast out there because you hit anything.
They ship you to the nearest prisoner island, which is Antarctica.
You get to go back to Tasmania.
Yeah.
You start at the bottom again, work your way up. No, but that was one memory. But the other one was, these Porsche transaxles, whether they're from Aisin or Getrag, the two main manufacturers, they have a lot of differential whine.
Yeah.
That's an overwhelming memory of those particular cars for me growing up. What was that noise?
Yeah. I mean, just when I was sort of entering the world and driving various modern examples, like the drivetrain noise is unique, and reading about like various failure points of the car, when they people describe the sounds of, you just think that the car is about to eat itself initially, and then you just learn that it's just part of the car, that it's just part of the experience.
So where I made peace with those kind of noise was really at tech school, when I kind of understood way bits of thrashing about, up and down, in and out, all that sort of stuff. But it was the diagnostic techniques of then isolating that noise. Hey, you're driving down the highway, you start hearing a particular clatter. If you're in a manual, you put your clutch in. If the clatter goes away, it's not your engine.
Yeah.
You're good. You've covered that. And then if it's maybe in the gearbox, you put it in neutral.
Yep.
And listen, if it goes away, and then, gauge your speed. If you accelerate, does it accelerate? And then you start working out where it is.
Yeah.
And that was really fun, exploring that. Because obviously they told us it. They put it on a whiteboard. It was in a book. You didn't get it. But then you take your car on the way home from school and do that.
Yeah.
And start listening to all the different pieces. And, being able to diagnose a throw-out bearing by driving a car is great.
Yeah.
And it is such a good feeling for me, not to be, smug and counting the dollars before it happens, but to drive a car for the first time that a client's just bought and be able to predict some of the future maintenance it's going to have just from noises and feeling.
See, and I love, because, when you, as layman, when you read forum posts, it's something like, it sounds like a raccoon eating a celery stick. So what do you think? What do you guys think this might be? And just learning actually what it might be.
I love when those people, they film it and go, "What's this noise?" and they're standing next to a freeway, or something. And it's like, well, that's a semi-trailer. I think it's a Mac.
Yeah.
So, do you have any Italian car anecdotes from Driver Source?
So I will answer that question about Italian car anecdotes from Driver Source, but keep things a little bit close to the vest.
Oh, we don't have to say names. We don't have to say names. This could be
Driver Source. The most valuable lesson that Driver Source taught me is that you sometimes you have to hit an Enzo with a hammer.
Sure, of course.
I mean, and to explain that logically, it's that doesn't matter if the car is worth 1 million, 2 million. I mean, there were $20-30 million cars that would come through there. You have to fix it. That's your job as a technician, to fix it. And you do what you can. You use the skills you have. And you would really like to hope that the skills match up with some kind of dollar amount or potential risk, depending on the workstation. But you have to do what you need to do to get it fixed. Yeah. And I mean, the Enzo, despite it being the modern one, I mean, there was the recent jalopnik article about the F50 and what Ferrari got right or wrong with it.
I read that, yeah. Mike Balaban wrote that.
Yeah, and then they talked about the comparison to, the Enzo that came after and how modern it was. I mean, it was, but it was still hand-built. And it was hand-built from carbon fiber pieces put in, autoclaves and,
in early days of carbon fiber, and especially for Ferrari.
How many Enzos did they make, do you know?
399, 400. Actually, that's another contentious thing because there's a lot of rumors that they made more than 600, but that they said it was 400.
Yes. In Ferrari way.
And I feel it from the look in your face, you're not surprised at that.
I'm not surprised at that at all.
With all of the special cars, there's actually documentation with the the 599 Aperta that they've made more than 300 more than they said they would make through actual documented serials.
Yeah, and and they've all got 0 miles because they've been edited and all that good stuff that Ferrari does.
Well, it's digital odometers.
Of course.
Thank you for existing, Ferrari. You make it very interesting. The reason I asked that specifically is because, if you're pressing anything or you're doing any form of carbon fiber production, you've got to make your mold. And then you make the first 2 or 3, you're probably junk, you'll throw them away. But then the next maybe 30 or 40, I don't know, I don't do carbon fiber, but let's say 30 or 40 are good. And they're within spec and they're fine. But after that, it starts getting a little worse. So especially if they made more than they said, well, let's say we're making 300 cars and we can do 50 cars of each mold. We got to make X many molds and go from there. And then they made more. At some point, these panels aren't going to fit all that well. Now, coming back to this specific situation about Italian car goodness, like all period Ferraris, it had the sticky button problem.
Of course.
I mean, this car had, less than 5,000 miles on it. This is the second time.
It's never seen sunlight.
And initially, the sticky buttons were, I believe, replaced under warranty with new sticky buttons.
On an Enzo, because I figured at some point they would figure this out because it's happened at least in every 90s Ferrari. But yes, so yeah, that was kind of a problem. And in the Enzo there were big sections of it, like the wind down windows. They had the manual windows, and that big circle was gross. Soft touch. I love it. No one even cares if it's soft touch. Literally nobody cares.
No. And so the shop was tasked, and I was kind of there and assisting with pulling the door panel off to pull these components out to send them off to a company that restores them. They do a great job. I forget the name of the company, but they do a really good job restoring that kind of texture without it happening again. But what we do is we look at the you can't look up a forum post for it, Enzo, let's be honest. We look at the very limited information you can get. There are, broadly speaking, 4 bolts hidden in these places holding this one-piece molded carbon fiber panel to the door. Pull the 4 bolts out. Yeah. Pull on the panel. Doesn't move. Go, interesting. Pull on a little harder. Doesn't move. Pull on a little harder again. I mean, it flexes a little bit, but it's still attached to that door. We go, we missed something. That's fine. Somehow they call up the factory or a particular Ferrari expert somewhere. Some help from above, and said, hey, look, we got this Enzo, we pulled these 4 bolts, the panel's not coming off. And whoever it is on the other end of the line said, no, you got it, just pop it off, it'll be fine. There's only 4 bolts,
just pull,
just pop it off, it'll be fine. So we're kind of pulling and prying on the top. And if carbon fiber is known for one thing, it's its flexibility and ability to bend. So if I'm known for one thing, it's probably not that I'm an exceptionally nervous person. I do really see the potential failure in everything. And I you worry about it. And so I'm looking at this, and ultimately I'm not responsible. I'm the kid in the shop, and I'm kind of helping or, holding and put your fingers here to wedge. If your fingers break, it's cheaper than the panel. It's good, all good. And so we're there, and we're kind of prying, and we look down in and see a bunch of washers. We look at this, well, that's not supposed to be there. Essentially what had happened, we got in there with a chisel, hit it, broke the washers, and then the panel popped off. I'm assuming this Ferrari was built just before lunchtime on a Friday. I mean, that's the only thing I can understand. I mean, well, just before lunchtime, any day, knowing the Italians. And a guy got his panel.
Yeah.
Maybe it was from the end of the mold or the beginning of the mold. It didn't quite fit, and he's running these bolts, and it's kind of flapping. He's like, "Oh, this is dumb. I'll grab some washers out of my toolbox, stick them. I got a good glue them though to hold it, to this bolt.
Yeah.
And then he glued them there and ran the bolt in, and I guess it squished the glue out and glued the panel to the washers to the thing, space it out.
Amazing.
And then that's where you have to hit the hands over the hammer.
That is amazing.
Amazing.
That's almost like the story of that This American Life when they were talking about the Numi factory.
Oh, yeah.
And how when they were building like the Chevy Nova or something like that, where they were like the employees were so disgruntled.
This wasn't at Numi. This was the
oh no,
this was
before.
Numi.
This is before.
This was before.
But they were just so spiteful of their like employment that they would literally just put loose bolts into a door panel because they just felt like it. And
or they put the wrong front end on a car, and they would all get sent out to just this lot that was just, this is the fix later lot.
This is
and
one
the
of-
lot would get full, and then they'd fix these cars later.
This is such a good story. Like, This American Life.
Definitely check it out.
Yeah,
It's
check
great.
it out. Like, it's the new me. I just look up NUU.
NUMMI.
Yeah, right. Good story. Anyways, but that is very interesting that I like that. I mean, it's the same kind of concept with Ferrari.
I mean, it's the personal nature of the car. I mean, sure, he didn't put a plaque on the engine saying he built it, but the guy left his mark.
Hey, at Pebble Beach 2057, they're going to be looking for those black washers.
Oh, yeah, hell yeah.
And the original glue.
That could well be, like, imagine if you had all 400 of the 300 Enzos made at Pebble Beach, and they were trying to pick a best Enzo in class.
Yeah.
And you could prove that yours had the factory washer non-option.
That'd be rare.
With the empty bottle of wine
Oh
the
my
guy drank
God.
at lunch.
Yeah, you
didn't
stick
care
glass
anymore.
in there.
It'd be nice.
I know.
On
That's some providence.
the Leno video this week, he had a 959, and he said there's the owner was saying there's like a dimple under the driver's side mirror because of, I guess, the tension from the mirror on the door panel. And so they said anyone that's repainted, they kind of lose that. Like, they don't know how to recreate that.
Yeah.
But there's kind of a dimple in the metal from the mirror. So that's how you know it's not repainted.
Oh, that's good to know.
Anyway.
To be fair, like, that's probably just going to be on like a 959 SC.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we won't delve into that again.
We won't delve into that again.
No, but I will say that you should encourage them to delve into that, where they add more dimples.
More dimples.
The 959,
More
SG Super Golf.
Yes,
It's
that'd
the
be
golf ball
amazing.
effect.
It'd be amazing.
The Vortex.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Vortex
Oh god.
technology.
Did you get to move any other interesting cars at Driver Source?
The most giddy I ever was driving a car was moving Bill Cosby's old Speedster.
Really?
No, but it was fun driving it across the street.
Wait. So what era Speedster?
356.
Okay.
Late 50s.
So it was an
Wow.
open top. Did it have a roofie?
Oh, let's really.
We're gonna go there. Okay, wait.
Drunk lines.
So, parallel to all this, we should say though, we should rewind the tape just once more. We should go through your car history.
Yeah. You own more interesting cars than both of us
It's
combined
true.
right now.
Yeah.
I'm currently on a bit of a tear and a run and living the dream.
But we encourage this.
Oh,
But yeah, no. So going back to it, I learned to drive in the Boxster S.
Yes.
And then I moved on to a more glamorous flat six. a larger flat six, just the big bore option,
Yes.
and inherited the family's Subaru Outback.
Oh my god.
So it was the H6, a 3 liter. It was
Yeah.
automatic. It had the leather interior, and it was the wagon, and I could take it to the beach. And
I'm gonna be offensive here. You know how like if you're in China, Chinese food is just food. In the Outback, is it just called
Car?
I mean, so think about Subaru's logo. It's got the star constellation
stars, yeah, of
from
course.
the
Yeah.
Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
And I mean, Subaru and Australia have this long, intermeshed and really quite weird relationship. That car, we had a number
Is
of
there a lot of
Outbacks.
lesbians there?
Yeah, no,
well.
no, they all drive Saabs.
What?
I
And
admire
Volvos.
that. That's amazing.
Oh, because there was really Super really did make a pitch for
it was
lesbians.
it was Richard's
intentional.
group in Dallas.
Yeah.
No, it was like Saab convertibles and Volvos in
Where do
Australia.
they drive now?
I think XC90 still,
Okay.
but they're really rich and they're married to some dude and they don't really care and they're having an affair. It's a Real Housewives of Melbourne thing.
Okay.
Actually, I must say I'm not keeping up with gay transportation culture in Australia all that
That's not what
Well-
you told us earlier.
Allow me.
Yeah.
Let's back to your car history. You had the
Yeah.
Subaru.
So we had this run. We had a Mitsubishi Magna wagon that was front wheel drive, and we took it across the country. And
Magna. I don't even know what that is.
what
Is there a US
I
equivalent?
don't believe it. It was the Mitsubishi version of like a Toyota Avalon.
Okay.
A front wheel drive V6.
Ooh, I would
full
hope that
size.
it was
Like
like
a
a
Diamante.
Diamante. Yeah. Ooh,
Yeah, and-
Diamante.
Honestly, I don't know enough about American cars
Yeah.
to know what you had.
Yeah.
But
It would
anyway,
have been.
sucked.
It would have been like. Oh my
Oh
god,
my
that was really loud.
goodness.
It would have been like an executive saloon
Yeah.
where it was just kind of like large for no reason.
Yeah, and this is when we moved from, I was born in Darwin in the top, and then we lived up in Karratha, which is out in the desert, and there we always had Land Cruisers and Pajeros and lifted company cars, radios, the works, because you could get stuck.
Yeah.
You needed a big CV antenna. But then we moved to the city, we ended up with these wagons to haul around my sister and I, and we go camping and driving. The closest relatives that I had were 6 hours away. And then most of them were about 9 or 10. So we would be driving a lot. So
So-
wagons are essential.
You were. Would that have been coastal where you were?
Yeah, so my mum and dad are both from Adelaide,
Okay.
in South Australia.
Yes.
So the bottom, middle state. I grew up in Melbourne with my sister.
Yeah.
And then we got a lot of family back in Adelaide.
Yep.
We also have a lot of family in Canberra and then the southern coast of New South Wales.
Okay.
And those were sort of your 6 to 10 hour drives.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the front wheel drive sucks, as it does for the most part.
Sure.
And then we moved on to the Subarus, the Outbacks. This is when they made that really big push in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Paul Hogan, the best Minister of Australia.
Best Prime Minister. Well, at this point, everyone who's Australian's had a turn.
Of course.
It's like musical chairs
Yeah.
at this point now.
Yeah.
So we moved on to the Subarus, and I kind of inherited that. My mum got a Mercedes, and
Yeah.
my dad had his Porsche, and
Yeah.
they were doing a bit better in life. So that was the first car that I fell in love with, not the car, but having a car.
Sure.
Because that's when I was 18, I could drive around, I could go to the beach, hang out with my friends, go camping, drive. And so,
Was it a manual?
no, they didn't do the 3 liter in a manual.
Oh,
Oh, but you had the 3 liters. So that's
Had
nice.
the 3 liter, was a whopping 250 horsepower, which is great
Oh
because
yeah.
Dad's Boxster had 250
Yeah.
horsepower out of a 3.2
It was a fucking flat 6.
Yeah.
In
But
a wagon.
The Subaru engine was smaller.
Yep.
Of the same year, and made more power.
It wasn't
half as much to change the oil on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was, and I must say, when you're in your provisional, so when you get your license in Australia at 18, you go to what you call your P plates, your provisional license.
Yeah.
You get your red Ps first for a year, and you are not allowed to drive anyone your age in the car.
Okay.
Like, so you can't take, if you can take your family, you can only take one friend. Because we had a number of kids that would have 3 or 4 of their friends.
Yeah.
They crashed, and we'd lose a bunch of young people at the same time. Then you go to your Green Prix, where you can have as many friends as you want because you've got a year of driving, you're probably a little safer. But all of that time, until you're about 22, 21, 22, no V8s, no turbocharged vehicles,
Like that is
no high
That'd be,
that
performance.
is
that'd be impossible
actually-
now because everything's
yeah.
turbocharged.
Wait, but that is actually a limitation. Like
That is, and they will. So we have random
drivetrain limitations. That's
Yeah, so we will have. They originally tried to do a power to weight
Yeah.
ratio thing, and that
Yeah.
was unsustainable. So they had no V8s, no turbocharged vehicles, and then a list of high performance 6-cylinder motors
That's
that were
insane.
NA that you couldn't have.
I assume
Wow.
they've advanced that now because you could have like a 1.3 liter 3-cylinder
Do you remember
turbo.
anything on that list of high performance 6-cylinders?
Yeah, so number of cars that I now own: 993s, 996s, 997s.
So yeah, please go
you-
through your current list of cars.
Anyway, so currently there is a 96 Carrera 2, so
Yep.
993 Carrera 2 that's kind of the shop mascot, Arena Red.
Red.
Arena
Yeah,
Red,
as
the good color.
Throwback to the previous episode where there's the matching companion turbo.
Yep.
I've got a 89 944 S2
Yep.
from the same episode. That's the
one that you
Luxo
drove
barge.
here. Yep.
The Luxo barge that I
Yeah.
drove over here. That is
Yeah, you
going
said
off to-
that walking in. I was
Yeah.
like, "What car did you
yeah,
take?"
going off to Churro next week.
Yeah.
And then I've got the 1990 NA Miata with a 1.8 in it.
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, my commute is half a mile. That's the
Yeah.
one I don't really care if I get the oil warm or not.
Yeah.
It's on coilovers, a slam, but I put more into the stereo than I did into the car. I'm
Yeah.
reliving the 16-year-old car experience
Yeah,
I never
yeah.
got to have. And then I just picked up an E46 M3 convertible with
Yeah.
a 6-speed.
Off of Bring a Trailer.
Off of Bring a
In the
Trailer.
good color.
in the
Yeah,
good color.
One of the good colors.
Anthracite gray.
That's it, and purely because when I was 18, I wasn't allowed to drive one, and that was the car when I was 12. That was
It
the
was
coolest BMW you
the
could get.
car, and
It's still the coolest BMW
yeah.
you can get.
and you've
It's all
had-
been downhill from there.
Yeah, and you've had a previously a 996 Turbo X50
Turbo S,
Turbo S.
not a
Yeah,
pleb.
One of the
Yep,
rare
of course.
black coupes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Or
yeah,
one of the
yeah.
rare coupe manuals.
Yeah,
Coupe
so of the 6-speed manuals they made in 2005, it was early 2005, there were 604 made.
Yep.
Because here's the pattern, and I'm not pointing this out to you, but as the longer the model is on the market, the more, like, by that last year, it's 90% cabs and 95% automatics.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh
so
yeah.
I'm not looking for a 997 GTS, but by the time they made the GTS, everything was a cab,
It's
everything was
just-
PDK.
Yeah,
The
and then
rare diamond.
I had a rant the other day about putting a GTS package in any form of cab.
Oh no. Yeah.
They're all cabs.
I hate
And
it.
all the
Yeah.
people that ordered them bought cabs.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of that, but
No.
yeah. So I had the Turbo S, which, I mean, owning a supercar is fun.
Oh man. You know
I
what?
mean, that's just
We were going to do like maybe a side segment where I have to field you on a potential bad idea, which is there is a 996 Turbo Polar Silver, 120,000 miles, 27-ish grand.
I sold mine with more miles than that for 2.5 times that.
So I'm very tempted because it looks well maintained, and I would love that as it has patina, and I would love to
It's a little-
street
like,
park
the
that.
body's a little bit rough.
It's a little rough, so I could street park it, but also it'd be amazing to have that as a switch off daily driver.
Yeah, but then you'll find yourself taking great liberties with the brakes and the acceleration. And
oil lines.
the oil lines aren't so much a problem. It's the 997s, they're a problem.
Yeah.
The 996, the coolant line job is a big deal, but a high mileage, cheap car.
Yeah, so it's got it's $120 on the mileage, and it's so tempting for the price, just because like it is the Metzger engine.
What I'll say
It's so cool. It's so cool. The 996 Turbo is, and I welcome you to argue me. You'll be wrong if you
And-
argue with me. The 996 Turbo is the last cool Porsche Turbo.
I 100% am on board with that, and not
The
only that,
997 Turbo is not cool.
look at that. I got it right there. 1/18th scale
Yeah.
model there.
Now, I'm not a huge fan of the way the 997 Gen is aging in general.
Yeah.
Aside from the 997.2 GT3 RS 3.8.
100%
Not
Oh,
the 4 liter.
with
the
you
3.8.
on that, because it is held by boring internet commenters as the savior of Porsche, and it is wrong.
But the 997 is
That
like
is a
such a
wrong
right
opinion.
size,
Yep.
and it's. I mean,
The 997 is good.
it is good.
But like 996 has been dismissed incorrectly. Like
you know what I think. Let's rewind back to when the 997 gen was released. We were talking 2005, 2006. Those years were remarkable for the first hyper-size
Definitely.
supercars.
Definitely.
You've got your Enzo there.
yeah,
You've got the SLR McLaren, the
Carrera
first
GT.
the first Zonda, the Carrera
Yeah,
GT.
yep.
I mean, we really brought out a whole new
Sure,
category. There
sure.
was even an Australian attempted supercar called the Joss, which you have to look up.
I don't even know
will
what
include
this
this in the show notes.
is.
I will. We will look
But-
this up.
It was bizarre.
You're-
I saw it at an auto show, and I don't think it
Yeah.
existed beyond that.
It's in a shed now.
And that's the 997's party trick was I'm the fastest car to accelerate from, and I'm going to
Yeah.
go back to my road roots, from 80 to 120 kilometers.
Sure,
now.
sure. Yeah.
It was the fastest thing that did that, but it was it was the first vacuum cleaner turbo.
That, and even though it was kind of the last of the analogs, I mean, it did have hydraulic steering, etc.
It-
But
yeah,
I dial it back to the 996 as far as
The
perfection.
turbo was just the turbo didn't look as cool to
It
me. It wasn't
didn't.
iconic like the silver 996
It
turbo
really
on the poster.
didn't. And
you
I'm
know?
not
It's
gonna lie,
just
like,
the
there
way.
was
I
just
mean, half of it's
something.
marketing,
It really is.
and
But the
also because a
996
lot of 997.
But honestly,
turbos were
like you think
cabs.
about it, like would you really rather have a 996 GT2 or even a GT3 versus 997? And while I do think that 997 merits all around, I don't know. Like there's something about nostalgic.
So there's a couple points that I'll have that influence my decision there.
Yeah.
Whereas if you would take a later 996 body and an earlier 997 body of a relatively similar model, you can unbolt every panel from one and put it back on the other and switch cars.
Wow.
I mean, they are fundamentally just an evolution, but none of it. All the panels are different, and that's why you have to replace all of them. You can't just replace one thing. But as far as the fundamental, how the engine's bolted in, how the suspension's mounted and set up, it's the same.
It was a heavy facelift.
Yeah, and so while I absolutely prefer the 996 turbo
Yeah.
over the 997 turbo, it's why I absolutely prefer the 997 GT3 over the 996,
Sure.
because they're different representations of the same idea for what is fundamentally the same car. And they learnt a lot, and it really comes down to the power plant.
Yeah.
I prefer the way the 996 delivers boost.
Sure.
It feels more turbocharged.
Yeah.
And then from a technical standpoint,
Yeah.
I abhor the way the 997 turbo just creates heat.
Yeah. But isn't that just it? Is it, with modern technology, we complain, well, no one complains today about how a 930 builds boost. It's classic, it's classic turbo lag that'll kill you, but it's charming in that you have lived. And in that way, when you feel a turbocharged engine, because everything is a 2-liter turbocharged engine now, and you couldn't tell, honestly, unless you really quiet it down and listen to the whine. Otherwise, you wouldn't know. And the notion that you can feel a turbo spool and feel that kind of that curve of acceleration, I think that is the last of the analog feels, because turbos are perfect now. You have these like bi-turbos, twin turbos that will usher you into acceleration is so linear that you would think that it was naturally aspirated. And that's fine. It's cool. It's great. It's perfect, but it lacks the emotion.
So an example of that disappointment I had recently is our all mutual friend Tom. With the Testarossa we talked about, the Delta that you talked about. He bought a GMC Typhoon.
Yeah.
And, that's a straight 6 with a big turbo in it.
Oh,
And
okay. I
I-
didn't know it was a turbo. I thought it was supercharged.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about that car, and he told me, and I drove it. And I was expecting turbo lag,
Yeah.
and I was very depressed at how linear it was.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I mean, it moves. and
Yeah.
it moves around left to right. You have to really
yeah.
pay attention, keeping it straight. But
Does it feel quick?
It was quick.
Yeah.
It was quick, but it felt.
What are
more-
the specs on that?
I don't know, but
I think it was the high 200 horsepower, and back then everything weighed like 3,200 pounds.
Yeah.
it felt a lot more like my old 35i with a manual.
Oh.
In the way that it delivered its boost and its power.
Yeah.
What I did to my Turbo S, and the Turbo S having the X50 kit by default, which was, and we should clarify, larger intercoolers, larger turbochargers, and just minor workings around software mapping and boost control. What I did is I put larger piping in, which actually it slowed the boost onset, smoothed it out, and actually raised where it really affected the car. So that, I made that car feel more NA.
Sure.
But still, foot in, and I remember taking you to Dallas. Where we
went. That was one of my questions. My question was, remember when we went to Dallas?
And the times when just, third gear or fourth gear, you just step on it and you just feel it pick up and just ride the wave.
We hit some high speed in that car.
Yeah, I mean, that thing was an absolute monster.
That's just it. I love how just discreet and unassuming the 996 turbo in any form really is.
That one especially, I mean, I had a rear-wheel drive running full cup.
Oh, really? So you did the conversion?
When you say I pulled out the axles and the front differential. It's not much work.
There's no electronics. I read up on it because I've always thought if I'd ever gotten a 996 turbo, I basically just pull the front, the axle and the...
In something that you talked about after Radwood on your podcast then, the four-wheel drive system between the 993 turbo and the 996 is incredibly similar.
Yep.
Really?
The four-wheel drive system between the 996 and the 997 is completely different.
Yeah.
I can believe it. So I read in literally that book over there that says Porsche Turbo that the 996 Turbo was like a rushed afterthought. Like they originally weren't going to make a turbo model, and then they did. And then I told this to Tony Hatter from Porsche, who designed the 993, and he was like, "Oh, that's bullshit. Yeah, we always knew we were going to do it." But it is interesting that they were very close. But one thing I was going to say, winding back to you said, imagine back to in 05, 06 when the 997 launched. And the 997, I feel, as a generation, and I know it looks good. It definitely looks good. It seemed like such a regression of ambition. Where to go from the 996 to the 997, because the 996 was like a visionary thing, and the 997 was like, how can we band-aid this to look more like a 993?
I don't think that was a reaction to
It totally was.
No, I don't think it was a reaction to the response they got for the 996 visually. I think it was concern about the reaction they got visually, knowing they were implementing a bunch of technology. And they didn't want to double down. And I think that they went for a traditional look going, well, we kind of shot our shot with this, and it was fine. But we're also putting VTGs in, water-cooled turbos. We're doing this, the new all drive system.
Well, I'm just talking about the base generation in general. But I also think it was a case of them not knowing what people loved about Porsche. I mean, I think it was a miscalculation on some regards with making the 996, and then it was like a kind of a doubling back. But it was funny because the 997, they're like, or when they came out with the 996, they're like, finally, we don't have to do these insane flared fenders. We could just make a car that's the same width all the way down. It makes so much more sense, and it does make sense on paper, but the fans, not so much.
Yeah,
that's interesting to me because I don't actually remember the 997 coming out. I remember
some of us are much older.
No, I mean, I was alive. I was conscious of Porsche and what they were doing.
Yeah,
but I absolutely remember every bit of journalism about the 997 Turbo. I don't remember the reception for the base models.
Remember the 996.
It was a big thing.
It was a big thing.
Spy photos. I remember the photos. I remember it was like it basically looked like a newer 993.
It was like the 992 launch, not even launch, just rather the spy photos where people were like, oh, look at the design cues that they're potentially going forth with, where they have a flat, instead of a smile with the hood, it's a flat line that looks like the the old cars, etc. Anyway, so the 997, of course, there's so much speculation because the 996 was always controversial, etc. But I remember that at the very least that like it was potentially relief, even though nowadays I love the 996 headlights over the 992. Especially because the
You mean the 996.1 versus
996.1 versus 0.2 because the GT1 headlights were 996.1 headlights.
Yeah.
So good.
My favorite thing about the wind up to the 997 was that all the spy photos showed they had the lobster claw wheels and they'd be blacked out and everything, and all the magazines would be like, well, obviously these are pre-production wheels. We'll see a real wheel design, and then they launch it and it's got the lobster claws, and it's like,
and I hated the
I
lobsters
love them.
when they launched, and now I'm fine with them.
I
But
love
whatever.
I'm not a big fan of them.
You probably
Which
have a technical reason why they suck.
No, there's no technical reason. It's just a personal preference. The technical reasoning behind that wheel is they're fantastic. They're one of the lightest
Yeah, they're
cost production
it's
wheels.
full of holes.
That's
so,
what that's what
great.
people use for their track wheels. If you
Yeah.
go down
Yeah.
to MSR or you go to Coda and you look at your 997s or your 987s and things, and if they can find the right offsets, when people are racing on a more meager budget, they will buy lobster claws
Yeah.
because they are cheaper and they're the lightest factory wheel that is being discarded.
Yeah.
It's a bit like why I have the MYO2s, the 996.2 wheel on the 993. For a long time, they weren't desirable, which I think is perfect. 'Cause
And
I'm
they're
a
the-
sucker for a 5-spoke.
Wait, are they They're 96.2 wheels, right?
Yes, so that's why they call the MYO2,
Yep.
like the model year 2002.
Yep.
And then that was kind of the launch thing that they did
Yeah.
Yeah.
to get away from the base of turbo twists.
I've always
Well,
thought
it's just it is super weird that the turbo twist carried from the 993 through the 996. It is, when you think about it, extremely.
Oh, it is.
But with two variations, of course, with the
Hollow
normal,
spoke.
and then the
But
actual turbo
visually,
hollow.
there's no
yeah.
variation.
There's if you're just concerned, 98% of people should just be concerned that it's visual, because who cares if it's actually a hollow spoke. Nevertheless, wait. So we should move on to, before we
Yes.
wind down the podcast.
Yeah, I'm thinking we need a lightning round.
We'll have a lightning round here.
All right, what's your perfect garage, Jordan?
How many cars do I have to play with?
4.
Pagani Zonda,
Okay.
Porsche 962,
Oh,
Ooh, yeah.
you got a highbrow.
Mercedes 600 Grosser,
Whoa.
and then probably the 540k.
So what
Okay.
so you're daily driving the 962.
No, the Zonda.
Okay.
All right.
Gotcha.
It's a BMW.
That's
so.
good. No, it's
AMG.
Mercedes.
Oh, sorry, Mercedes, rather.
This was your question, Chris. How many people have mistaken you for British or Southern?
My favorite is I do get the odd South African. I get a lot of British.
Okay.
Every now and then when people know better, they say Kiwi.
Really?
But my favorite story answer to this is I meet someone, and Texans are very polite. Oh, you're from Austria. You go, ja, natürlich, ich komme aus Österreich. Meine Familie kommt aus Österreich.
No.
I switched to German. And then they know what they've done. And it's this awkward elevator ride.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. Yes, I am a.
This is a little late. How are Chris and I? How are our Australian accents?
Also,
Atrocious.
no,
Okay,
we
that's
have to. No, we have to do them though.
We did them at the beginning.
but we can do them again.
We don't need to.
because I only like to say.
we'll send people to Australia for 30 years for stealing a loaf of bread.
Okay.
That's
We
Australia.
didn't send a lot of butchers.
I have
You butchered it.
two because
You can stay out.
That's the tagline of our show.
Yeah.
I don't actually understand, but I have so many acquaintances and friends who are actually Australian, and so the two phrases that I can very Australianly project would be if I were to
Using
say,
words you can't say on a family podcast.
I could, no. However, I can say, whenever someone with an Australian accent can say something with a 9, like 1999, 1999, 18,
New for 96.
New for 90,
Oh, yeah, that's gonna be their
96,
new-
96,
We're adding that in.
or, sir, we're gonna move on to this.
This is terrible.
This is terrible. I'm sorry. I'm not very.
All right, next
sensitive.
question. Lightning round. It's called lightning round. We're gonna end in the thunder. How does your experience with the cars? How does that change how you view exotics and classic cars? You're working on them in a brief.
Yeah, you get to see them.
I do spend a lot of time making sure that I don't resent them. And that's why I keep my weekends relatively free. I don't really make plans, but I will spend a lot of extra time in the shop being there, not as the shop owner and not as, the business owner and not as the mechanic, but just looking at the speedster we're restoring and enjoying it. Yeah. And just looking at, my car and enjoying it. I mean, it's nice. All cars are broadly put together with nuts and bolts the same way. But you do really get taken on a journey of the company, the designer, the particular model, and then also, in some cases, the guy who built it on a Friday afternoon before a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
You learn a lot of that, and I love getting to know the cars. It's quite nice.
It's like it all comes back to that book you had as a kid.
It really does.
Is there any? I think I asked you already what notable cars you've driven, but I asked you more specific about a specific establishment. Was there any notable cars that you've driven? I don't care if you moved it 20 feet. That counts. Yeah.
See, for me, it's been the Speedsters. It's been the Veyron. One of the Geneva show car Ferraris from the late 50s. It's baby blue, the ivory, completely original.
Oh.
The most expensive thing they have at Driver Source. I got to move that one again. Feet. And those are the particularly special cars. Then there's all the ones that are special to me. The first time I drove the E46 is a huge thing for me. Just because ever since I was a kid, that's been what I've kind of wanted.
But seriously, like I would, as a kid, because I was a Volvo nerd as a child, like if I were today to be able to
this is the lightning round.
Enter a Volvo T5R wagon in banana yellow, I would be elated because
5 cylinders are good cylinders.
It's a good number of cylinders. So in a ways, Kevin,
next question. Remember when we drove to Dallas? Briefly, an overview was my car needed a warm-up regulator. So we should have said this earlier, but I met Jordan after I bought an Aircooled 911, I called up Modern Aircooled and I said, "Are you willing to do a post PPI, a post PI for me?" And I brought my car, and that was at the old shop. And eventually,
the old time on the east side.
A little bit later, it needed a warm-up regulator, and we sent out. I think we sent out mine. It was going to be rebuilt and replaced, and it was
a core exchange. We sent it off. The one you got back wasn't the same one.
No,
right, exactly.
Because it would still be waiting.
Oh my god!
Yeah, we ended up driving to Dallas.
I recall this so hard because Kevin, unlike me, when purchasing cars, I'm a pedant. I just have to boil this car down to its basic skeleton and figure out what the fuck. Kevin is like, "Oh, here's the 1980 911 SC. I'll just bid on it on eBay."
I didn't think I would win.
It was, I don't know, a pair of used American Apparel jeans, and you won.
Yeah. Accidentally.
And you got it. And I said, "Oh, cool. So you got a PPI clearly in Cincinnati, whatever the fuck it was from." And you're like, "What is a PPI? What does PPI mean? That sounds offensive."
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one urinated on this car,
Nope.
Christopher.
Nope.
So, yes, we got the warm-up regulator. We show up at this guy's house. First of all, we show up at the guy's home. His address was his home. And there's like 4 non-working DeLoreans in the driveway, that's
insane.
That's a look.
So he's the CIS DeLorean guy now. I mean, Houston is overrepresented in the world as far as DeLorean
I love
production.
that TIL. I've learned that DeLoreans are CIS cars.
Yes.
Oh God, see, I adore well-running CIS cars. I mean, when I was driving your car back from Austin, it's adjusted right, it runs, it's fantastic. I would firmly die on the hill that the 930 wouldn't be the 930 without its flawed fuel system. And to me, that is one of the most special driving experiences, is being scared shitless by a 930. But yeah, that Dallas trip, that was, hey, I'm really trying to prove that I'm not a dodgy shop owner. This is actually what's happening. So I've invited you to drive to Dallas to some guy's house to get a part.
Oh my god.
It was like 4 weeks.
It was a bit because I kept bugging you and stuff, and then you're like, well, it was like a Monday. You're like, well, I'm driving tomorrow. I'm gonna go up to this guy. Do you want to go? And I'm thinking like, well, I've got to go. Like I know I can't say no, and so I went. But it felt like if you ever see the Seinfeld where George is driving Susan's parents to his fictional house in the Hamptons, I felt like I was George, and it's like, well, all right, we are going all the way to the Hamptons.
I feel like the two things I distinctly remember about it, 3 things. One was the crappy farm-to-table salad that we had on the way back.
I thought it was fine. But
it was fine.
It was free for me. So.
Salad's hard.
The other one was a big discussion about the SLR McLaren, a car that I do have
Kevin loves the
very
SLR
mixed
McLaren.
feelings about.
I don't like it.
I would like to revisit
really
that because I don't
weird.
remember that.
We'll do that next. But the third, and I'm not sure if it was this trip to Dallas or not in the turbo, but I distinctly remember there being one time when I drove to Dallas in the turbo, a black Prius that was driving like a dick. And I was sitting at cruise control, 90 odd mile an hour as you do in Texas. And he was going a little faster and weaving, and I moved the cruise control up a little. I'm doing 93, 94, 95.
This was definitely our trip.
And so it was you then that it was in the car, and I was looking to say, hey, he can only go 117. Don't ask me how I know. And I distinctly remember setting the cruise control to 117 and watching this Prius try and pass this, and again, the Turbo S is as fast and as insane as it was on its slicks, rear-wheel drive, and all suspension, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
It had a stock exhaust. It was all blacked out. I mean, it was just, if you didn't look at it, you wouldn't see it.
Because even the turbo features kind of disappear on the black.
Yeah.
Because you don't see the vents. The tail is tiny.
It was. And so we're running along and get to 117. This is Prius straining to be a dick on the highway. And I remember dropping gears and we're doing 150, 160.
We made it to Dallas and back faster than than anyone's ever made that drive. My next question is a one-word question. Spiders? Question mark?
No.
Do you have any spiders?
I'm fucking terrified of spiders.
What is your worst spiders experience that made you so terrified of spiders?
The big thing, and I won't use the appropriate words to describe them again on the
We
family
can swear
podcast.
on this. It's not a family podcast.
Huntsman's and they're the size of a dinner plate, and they will sit up on a corner on the roof of a room. And the thing is that they're going for bugs, so they're going to sit above the corner where the bugs come in, which is the door. So I've been trapped in so many rooms. I am terrified.
If you were to go under it, would it drop on you?
No, they're not drop bears.
Are there others that are droppers?
They're drop bears. Drop bears are some kind of carnivorous koala that will drop on campers. Only tourists, just to eat them. You can look it up. It's online.
A koala eats people?
No, drop bears. They're a carnivorous koala.
A carnivorous koala?
Yep.
And they will eat people?
Google it.
They eat people?
They eat people.
Oh, my
Campers,
God.
mostly tourists.
Koalas
Just like
are
sharks.
so cute, though.
Sharks only eat tourists. No, actually, all koalas actually have chlamydia. Don't rub them too hard.
I feel like I've heard that
They
before.
do. They actually do.
It's just like our president. It's a shame.
Jeez. Yep.
No, he has syphilis and chlamydia. It's a shame.
And dementia
It's a
and
shame,
all that good stuff.
It's too bad. Okay, so if I'm going to the Bathurst 1000, I'm not. But if I'm going to go to the Bathurst 1000, how many cases of beer should I bring? I heard they put a limit on it.
Well, so now it's gotten a little bit different because you've got less Holden versus Ford and more Volvo versus AMG. Now, Volvo they were racing at Bathurst. Volvo don't make a V8 rear-wheel drive sedan. They do in Australia.
They really
to race in.
Oh, that's
Wait,
cool.
what? Yeah, because Volvo is all about
Isn't the
front-wheel
Altima in
drive.
there?
Yeah, the Nissan Altima. It's a V8 rear-wheel drive
What?
sedan in Australia.
Holy shit.
Oh, hang on.
Wait.
I had no idea. It was
The
amazing.
normal Altima, like, you can buy a V8.
Not the normal Altima.
Not the normal. Can you buy one that's a V8 in Australia?
No. But the race cars. But
just the race
there's a running joke about name any car in Australia, we'll race it. But it's got a V8 and a rear-wheel drive. And you can sound surprised by that, and then I'll say, well, how is the Ford Mustang doing in NASCAR or whatever?
Well, that's V8 rear-wheel drive.
I know, but it doesn't look anything like the actual car.
True.
And that's how our race series goes.
And now the Mustang's in V8 supercars.
Yeah, it's bizarre, but they're doing it.
You know, they did V8 supercars at COTA in 2012.
They should keep doing it. That is
It
an
was the
under-tired
coolest
car. I mean, they don't have enough tyre for the power that they have, and they hit each other like British touring. They're faster British touring cars.
I went to it
Yeah,
at COTA. And it was awesome because they pop up in the chicanes. They would pop up on two wheels, and it's the craziest looking thing I've ever seen.
But getting back
what
to
way? Like pop a
Bathurst
wheelie?
because
No, on the side. Like they would pitch over the curb, and they'd be at like maximum G turning already, and then they hit this curve, and
flick
it
up.
pops them up, so they would be.
and they're designed to do it. They
Dear
have
Lord.
to go.
Okay,
on their
that's
two side
insane.
wheels.
Actually, okay.
But getting back to how many cases of beer, it's cases of rosé now.
I'm into that.
Yeah, we're getting a bit
Yeah.
swankier with our V8 supercars. You're going to bury.
Is that a loophole?
Yeah, and it's 17, by the
Yeah.
way. 17 cases.
Yeah, I mean,
Fantastic.
to be fair, I would hope that. So when you at Modern Aircooled, you have your Friday night meetups. I brought canned rosé.
I did notice that, and
Yes.
I was a little
It was
interested to try some, but then we
an
drank whiskey in the bar next
awful
door.
mix. You do rosé, then beer, then whiskey.
Yeah, it's
but
terrible.
it
How do you
was
feel
fine.
Saturday?
It was fine.
I think okay. So I went through my lightning round. I think we're ready for our segment. So
New for 95.
So here's the thing. So I've realized when I was editing a previous episode that I did not explain this segment clearly.
No, I know. I've listened to enough podcasts to understand broadly what you're
Yes.
doing.
Okay.
So-
And it takes a particular knowledge that I don't.
No. So here's
That's
the thing.
fine. That's good.
We bring up
That's
the
good.
Wikipedia
Yeah.
on the screen.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we just talk bullshit about the cars. And if you have a connection to them and if you care. But what we do is we pick a particular year and we bring up the cars and we look at them and we give a choice for it's a variation on Fuck, Marry, Kill, but it's a Fuch, Marry, Kill. It ties into the Porsche thing.
Yeah.
And it is which would you daily, which would you drive once, and which would you send to the crusher? So if there's any Audis for 1996, I'll be sending those
Yeah,
to the crusher.
obviously.
The Honda CRV.
Yeah. Well, okay, here's the thing. 95 was a good year.
It was. This is the one Audi I would not send to the
The
crusher.
Proton Satria.
There's a lot of
Tuned by Lotus.
Oh my god.
That's it. That's it.
Oh
We're
my
done.
God.
There are a lot of good cars in 95. 95 was a good year. Ooh, and a bad year.
Should we just pick our own?
You know what? Yeah, I don't know. Can we do this? Like, here's some meat and grind here, but can we do this? Should we?
I don't know.
Okay, because we could also just comment on the cars.
We could just comment on the cars.
Okay.
But it does take away from not knowing that
I
to the
know.
segment. Okay. Let's just go through the car
We'll
list.
go to the car list. Okay, so 1995.
95.
We had the Acura SLX, which was the Isuzu
It's
Trooper.
Trooper.
Yeah, but it was the Acura. It was the very first Acura rebrand car.
First of many.
That was
Interesting.
kind of cool, but really dumb.
Yeah.
But the first Acura TL, which was a good car.
Questionable.
I liked it. It was a good entry luxury model car. It was the Honda Legend. No, it was a Honda something. It wasn't the Legend. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It was fine.
Okay, 146 Alfa Romeo. Do you know this?
The 146. Do you know what it was?
Yeah, it was a little. No, that's a hatchback. I'm pretty sure. Click on that. Let's.
Okay, wait. We're gonna go.
Because they had the 146 GTA. They had the.
Ooh, yeah.
it's a
Is
little hatchback.
that
Oh,
it? There, it
that's
was a
pretty
146.
forgettable.
Yeah, but it did have a good nose. All
I mean,
all
these
Alphas
Alphas
had
are
good
great.
nose.
These
but-
late model GTVs.
But the
were
next
terrible.
one, oh, they were cool.
No, they weren't. The Brera. The Brera was cool.
Wait, the
This was-
GTV. Oh,
I like these.
because we're British Americans. We thought this was real cool looking.
Yeah,
Those things are broken down at
Look
every
at
suburb in
that
Australia.
GTV, but like not the good GTV, but rather
The
the
90s
modern,
GTV.
the
The,
last-
transverse front wheel drive
the
GTV.
last
Yeah, but
good
that, I mean, that was
GTV.
one of those cars where the coupe version was just the convertible with the roof welded over the convertible top.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, that is cool.
The Alpina B12, which
Alpina
would be
B12.
That is a fantastic car.
E38 7 Series, but Alpina eyes.
I'm devastated that you guys were in the same area as Jason Statham the other day.
I
He
know.
didn't.
I
I
know.
I didn't see him.
I
I'm
thought.
crushed.
I think I saw him in a triple black 7 Series.
Yeah, I think you did.
Because he had the license plate.
Yeah.
So the S4, the S4.
Oh,
wait,
the S4.
So that's not the B5.
No, this is
A4.
This is the prior to B4, B3, B4. So this is
screw it.
old school VW based.
Okay, I'm gonna send this to
All
the
that.
crusher. This is going to the crusher.
Oh no. Okay.
All right. So we
like
get to the
them,
B.
'cause
We gotta move faster.
My
through
first
this.
one of my first car options was a 100 series Audi.
All right, we gotta.
Yeah, we don't need to know that.
Whatever.
Bentley
Okay.
Azure, cool car.
Bentley
Yes.
Azura, I'd love
Back
that.
when Bentleys were cool.
Turbo S, also really cool.
Yeah.
E30. Okay, here's the thing. E39. There's no way it debuted in '95.
Euro 95 US market 96. So
And it wasn't '96 model year.
96
it was
model
97.
year.
It was
No,
new
no,
for
no, no.
96, though.
It was
for 96.
97.
It was 96.
There was no '96 model year 5 series. Look it up.
was
No.
528i.
No.
What the fuck? Okay,
Oh,
we're getting
there
from
was-
this. We're getting from this offline. And
We
then
are. We're gonna
Kevin's
settle this.
going to
We're gonna
die
settle this with dueling guns. There was no '96 model
Traditionally,
year
where
5
I'm
series.
from, the loser gets to wax the legs of the other one.
Okay. Well, I'm gay, so I don't. You know,
Yeah, well,
I have
That
no
wouldn't be
inhibitions.
punishment for him.
Yeah. Z3. Okay,
Good car.
Z3. You know,
Z3 's
this
a good
was the
car.
year. Well, this was not actually the year of Bond. So
No,
95
no,
it
it
was
wasn't.
97.
Yeah, there was
96.
the world is not enough.
No, GoldenEye was
Gold.
'96.
Yeah, but when the Z3 was
That was GoldenEye.
Was that Goldeneye? Okay.
World is Not Enough was golden. It was Z8.
Yes, it was. Yeah, they
Which I
got
saw
cut in
one.
half.
I saw one on the highway a couple of weeks ago.
So did I actually on I-10.
Black one.
Oh.
I'm a silver.
Ooh.
Every now and then, like I drove back from Austin the other day, and there was a Fisker Karma just.
Always a hilarious sighting.
I was like, well, that's weird.
I love that.
I
Okay.
actually have a weird thing where I keep running into like Fiskers and Spikers
is really-
and
Spikers.
cars that I don't care
The
about that are very
one
rare.
and only time I ever ran to Fisker Karma was when I bought my 3030i E90 at Texas Auto Direct, and there was a Fisker Karma in the showroom, and it was like $1. Anyways,
C5 Corvette, great
C5
car.
Corvette. What a bad, dumb, terrible car.
No, it's,
I mean,
I
nothing
hate
to me.
C5.
it's cool.
None
Okay.
of those me
Chevy Express, we're skipping. Tahoe. Everyone that drives a Tahoe is a piece of shit.
Chrysler Cirrus, that's important.
Chrysler Cirrus, not so much.
The
There's a lot of cars we got to get through.
Sebring was
Sebring.
was kind of cool.
The next interesting one's the Fiat Barchetta. That was an interesting
Okay,
car.
so the Dodge
but that is true because we have the Dacia Nova and then we have the Dodge Stratus, which by the way was, that's a prolific.
All right, let's.
Whatever.
It was the Chrysler Cirrus of its day. Was the Fiat Barchetta? Was that Barchetta?
I don't even know. Okay.
No, I know what that
Jordan,
was.
explain.
Hover over and have a look. I mean, it was this little Fiat coupe thing.
Was that it?
Didn't.
They're cool. Was that not a rebadged
Wow, that's-
Alpha GTV?
I'm
That
pretty
is
sure it was the same the same front wheel drive platform.
100% Pininfarina.
It was 100% disappointing.
Oh my god! Because like the ambition that is
Yeah.
Okay, what do we got
exuded
next?
here? Whatever. Okay. We've got the Fiat Bravo and Bravo. We don't know what that is.
All right,
The
so we got some things we don't know what they are.
Ford
You know what these
Galaxy.
are?
No, they're
Okay.
That's a
Taurus.
Mondeo wagon. By the way.
Taurus.
The Taurus.
Oval Taurus.
Oh shit! Okay, but this was actually for the American market, '96. But we'll go for it anyways, because the Taurus was a very good car before it was the Mondeo, before it was a Focus.
The
Or
Taurus
sorry,
never became the Mondeo.
the Taurus became a Mondeo because there was no midline car.
The Contour.
So the Contour was, but this is before the Contour existed. Maybe
The Contour existed in like 96.
94, I think.
Okay.
Okay, whatever. But
You're not making sense.
this was a disappointment when the '96 Taurus came
It
out
was too ambitious.
because they were trying to do the '86 Taurus thing, where it was like, look at this amazing Euro flashlight design, and they came out with this like
Did you say fleshlight?
this new flashlight design.
Okay.
They came out with like a new Beetle, kind of like pre-new Beetle like crazy ass design that no one liked.
Remember
it
the
was
show
bad.
and it had like the weird little strip spoiler?
It was so bad.
Let's get to the Holmes.
mustache. But wait, we should
We've
say
got an
one thing.
expert.
We have to say one thing because the old Taurus, had a Yamaha V6, and then they moved to a V8, and it
Better.
was horrible.
Was it?
Yeah, it was
Does it
very
have-
bad. It was very bad.
Does it
We
have
should have
carbon
stuck with
buildup?
the. No, it was just not a good V8. It
It
was
had the same horsepower.
The Taurus
Same
is a
horsepower.
name. The Taurus is a nameplate we avoided in Australia by
no,
having good rear-wheel
you
drive.
did have the
so what was the
Holden
95
Commodore.
Commodore?
You know what? To be honest, I'm not particularly well versed on the VS
What about
because the
What is
VL,
VS?
the VL that came before, was the one that used the Nissan RB30.
Look at all the Utes available. You
Yeah,
had like
so
everything
cool.
was available
So
in a
cool.
Ute.
Yes, everything was available to you. No, so you always had these V series, like as far as
Man, people of Australia, they got to figure it out because people in Texas are pretty stupid and everyone has to have a giant full-size truck. But I mean, if you could have that, that fake masculinity with just a ute, you wouldn't have to have a full-size truck. You actually have handling.
yeah.
And
And you put the same giant ass
Yeah.
engine in it.
Car
Like you had the
based truck
Ford,
is
you had the
amazing.
Ford Triton here. You had a V10 in a truck. If you had made that a Ute,
Yeah.
it would be a fun car.
Yeah, it's like I mean, we as car enthusiasts admire the V10 Touareg, and it is a horrible
Only
thing.
you do.
Oh, I have a
Only
story
you
about
do.
one of those.
Please go ahead. Only Chris admires it. Go ahead.
It was one of the only.
Love
So
those.
we did an oil change one. So I had a particular client that had 3 cars. He had a 997 C4S, which is fairly normal in Houston, but he had an X5 with a 5-speed in it.
Ooh.
So 3-liter 5-speed X5, and then he had a V10 Touareg.
Oh my lord!
And what an interesting and unusual garage that
That
Oh
is
my
super
god!
weird.
I can only imagine.
The Touareg, the first time we kind of worked on it, we were so agog at this enormous V10 diesel thing. They have a cartridge filter you put in the center of the top of the engine, and we had changed the filter out. This is really early days in the shop, and we'd put it in. We'd screwed down the cap, but it just didn't seat properly. And we were we turn the car on, this diesel engine fires up. And
Oh,
if you know
man.
anything about diesels, I mean, when the oil comes out, it is black.
Yeah.
And this oil had run for maybe 3 or 4 rotations of the engine. It's already black,
Yeah.
but it hadn't seated right. The filters, so full oil pressure was just
Oh my
exploding
God.
in the first shop. And I don't know if you ever remember looking at the first garage, the number of oil stains on the roof.
There were oil squirts.
There were 2. One was from the Touareg for not quite seating the filter cap right, and we just shot diesel oil up in the air, and it then went back down on the engine, and it went into this diaper, and we had to kind of clean the car so it wouldn't stink like oil fumes
Yeah.
for the rest of the time. And the other one was from me trying to drain the oil caddy with air pressure,
Dear
releasing the
Lord.
valve at the wrong time.
That is amazing.
Wow.
That was a hell of a car.
I mean,
I've seen pictures of people. You have to lower out the entire drivetrain and all the turbos and stuff to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
the bottom to change the turbos, which are consumables. Just
I-
brake pads.
Yeah,
I
it's-
100% applaud Volkswagen for just trying this stuff. But if we're honest, the W8, the W12, the V10 diesel, while admirable efforts, oh man,
Well, you
Oh.
didn't have the 6-liter V12 twin turbo diesel
I
Q7
would never. Oh my god! But I mean, it's so cool. The idea is so cool. I want a V10 Touareg. That'd be amazing. But I'd never own one.
As someone who drives around in a diesel Cayenne a lot,
Yeah,
fuck
it's
the Dolphins.
a V6, right?
Yeah, it's a 3-liter V6, Audi turbo diesel engine. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Was it excluded from Dieselgate?
No. We got about $22,000 back.
Wow.
It was a lot of money.
Christ! Wow.
Yeah. So we had that car.
Did they have to do a fix to it or something?
Yeah. It
Is it
makes
worse?
no difference how it
Really?
drives. No, we use a little bit more diesel fluid.
The urea.
What we really wanted as Australians is we wanted the Cayenne Diesel S, which is the 4 or 5 liter V8 twin turbo diesel
Yeah.
that made 400 horsepower and
That's the thing.
700 foot-pounds of torque.
Diesels are so cool because while they might not be fast on a straight line situation, the torque is
So
amazing.
And I mentioned this to Kevin earlier. I mean, my mum's old car that we still keep in Australia, we're still on about, is a 2009, 2008 W209 Mercedes C220 CDI diesel.
You know what?
So
Yeah.
it's a 2.2 litre turbo diesel. It makes 160 horsepower, but it makes
that.
as much torque as a Ferrari 355.
Yeah.
That was the newest Ferrari matched in torque, and I remember that stat because I was a little embarrassed at the time. But I can drive that car from Melbourne to Adelaide, Melbourne to Canberra, Melbourne to fucking anywhere, and it just cruises along at the 103 kilometers an hour that we're allowed to do in Australia. Because if you go 104, that's close enough to be 5 over, and you get fined.
That's so good.
Wow.
So good.
Wow.
Diesels, not bad.
But 96.
96. Hang on.
Okay.
95.
What about the 95? What about the Holden Frontera?
I have no idea what that is.
Don't know what that
Okay.
is. Okay.
Honda
What about
CRV, the first
The
CRV. Very
CRV
cool.
is important. That
Very
is an
important.
important,
It's a good car.
Very important.
would today have an overland version? That's a good car.
My brother-in-law used to have one, and I would borrow it sometimes for IKEA runs.
May we look at the consonants on the left side here, or right side, where I don't recognize any of these. The Proton
Well,
Pedina.
you're skipping the Honda Odyssey,
skipping
which is.
Odyssey.
I love that first gen Odyssey, by the way.
I mean, that was the
Okay.
revolution.
It was the four-door Honda Odyssey. Also, it was the Isuzu, whatever.
How
Good
do you not know what it is? Why
car.
did you bring it up if you didn't know what it
It's
is?
a Honda Odyssey.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
That's an
Okay.
important car.
Infinity
Yeah.
I,
What the fuck is
I-30.
that? No,
I don't know what any of those are.
that was just a Nissan Maxima.
Yes. Okay, and then you got the Lexus LX.
Ooh, yeah. The first gen LX, which actually was a 96, I think, officially for USDM.
Okay.
But it was a cleaned up Land Cruiser fascia with automatic climate control.
What do we have for M?
You just have the Mitsubishi Gauss.
Gauss.
No,
Nissan
those.
Almera. Don't know what that is. Do not care.
Don't care. We don't care about a lot of these here.
Yeah, but you do care about the
But-
Proton Satria.
We
Tell us why.
do.
Because the Proton Satria.
Yes.
I mean, so remember when, Hyundai and Daewoo and
the Korean
the
cars.
Korean cars just kind of appeared, and you're like, wow, they're a bit cheap, a little bit iffy, a little bit crap. Proton was one of those companies that said, well, you know how we're going to fix this? We're going to be tuned by Lotus.
Wait, were they
Yes.
actually tuned by?
They were owned by Lotus. Or
What?
Lotus.
They were-
They owned Lotus.
What the?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so Proton's this just bizarre
They bought
company.
Lotus in this era.
Yeah, and so
Can't
they had
believe.
this Satria, and the Satria was an economy hatchback.
I cannot.
But then they had the GTI, and then the Satria GTI was tuned by
Oh
Lotus,
my
and this
God.
is where it gets better. Because Australia, we only have 5 TV channels. We don't
Yeah.
really have a lot of TV production, so half our television's from America and the other half's from the UK. And so we have Wheel of Fortune. And in Wheel of Fortune, the car you won was always a Proton. And it just solidified its position as this lower tier game show where you win this Proton
I love
Satria
that. That's
tuned by
amazing.
Lotus.
That's
It was this
amazing.
little hot hatch that was. I don't know who bought it
I
because
don't.
it's still more expensive than buying a
even.
used car, but it was only marketed
it's
to
like a
people that
Nissan
could
Altima
only
of
afford
today.
a used car,
You'd almost think that it were the next car, which would be the Renault Megane.
which is fantastic.
Which this
We're-
isn't the good-looking Megane that had
No.
the weird angle, like the weird
It
vertical
is.
back
No,
window.
it is.
no,
Okay,
no, no,
well,
no.
maybe.
This is the
95?
first
What is the
version of
95?
that.
Because like it was like the '99 Megane.
Yeah, that started having a really big
You're right
butt.
because
It
they,
looked
then
like
they
the
had
Aventime.
they had the V6 in the rear and the whole thing.
No, that's the Clio.
Oh,
One of the things that America sleeps on a lot is
Oh yeah, the first
how
Megane's not so good.
how bizarrely incompetent the French are at making cars now,
Yeah,
but how insanely brilliant they can be. And
Yeah.
so when they make a car that's floppy and all over the shop and then go, hey, yeah, we're sorry about this.
Well-
if you give us an extra 10 grand, we'll put a bunch of coilovers on it and a Krapovich titanium exhaust.
That's just it.
And then there was destroy the Nürburgring.
In the day, it was not about the fact that French engineering was at the top of its game. It's rather the openness of other people to transform the cars, the Renaults and the Citroëns, into like weird fucking good cars. And so, that all aside, 95 also begat the Roof CTR2.
Pretty cool car.
Good car, very good car. And it's always hard to tell. Not hard to tell, but rather, there have been some replicas, even in Houston, where people are inspired.
Well,
we'll
Roof
say.
also had various levels of tunes. You could have a Roof that just looked just like a 993.
Yeah,
that
but
didn't
even
have
then,
anything
I
else.
say
No,
that
and-
as kind of an inspiration.
There are
still.
two clear delineations of the Roof. There is the Roof car. There's the Roof car that they changed the VIN. They bought a body in white and put their VIN on it. That's a Roof production automobile. Then they had the Roof authorized, like what is effectively your AMG of the time, where you have a specific like pattern and package, and then those companies, and this is a bizarre German law, and I dealt with this a lot when I was researching Nathan's Kramer 930. After a certain amount of time, you're obligated to start destroying records.
Yeah. Wait,
so-
really? But for a reason?
Yeah, it was a privacy concern.
Really?
They didn't want people to be bothered decades after.
Sure.
They didn't have a hand in the issue at hand anymore.
How weird to live in a country with regulations.
I know. And then so that was kind of the thing. So I've done a number of investigations, on Kramer cars, on Roof cars, where we're trying to ascertain whether in period times, in period fashion, they were built and modified by the people that designed the kit. Because Roof would sell you the kit.
Yeah.
They'd sell it to a dealership in Dallas, they'd sell it to a dealership in LA, they'd sell it to a dealership in New York, and then install it.
For a while, Dallas was the only dealership in the U.S.
Yeah, and there was the official one. You still got the parts.
Yeah.
And so weirdly, providence has become important, which is, as a technician, is obscenely odd to me. If a car currently has all the rare parts on it and those parts work, that's good enough to me for me. As far as how that goes. But that's something we've really explored as far as Roof and Kramer goes, where they've destroyed the records. They don't know. And the best they can give you is if it has all these parts consistently and they work, we probably did it.
Yeah.
And that's where...
That's a hard one, yeah.
No, that's cool. Interesting backstory. So next up, we got the Suzuki X90.
Yeah, we'll round this out with the Suzuki
Here's my
X90.
X90 story.
Go
I never
on.
actually. This is not an X actually related to me. I was joking with my best friend in high school or middle school. His mom would pick us up from school and we talk about cars.
Yes.
And I was saying like, oh yeah, I was like X90. It looks like I wanted to say it looked like It looked like a Miata that was jacked up off the ground, but I said it was like a Miata that's jacked off the ground. And I said this, then I
Did
froze because I realized I just said jacked
God.
off really loud.
Yeah, you would say like, I jacked off, pause.
Yeah.
3 days. Here's the joke.
Yep. Exactly.
No, the joke is about jacking off really loudly.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay,
And that's what
so
happened.
wait.
There was a lot of
Rounding out here, for 95. Oh my god. The Corolla E110, I don't know what that is.
Who cares? That's the Numi one.
Yeah, wait.
To bring it back, that's the Numi one. That's the Geometro.
You, as a graphic designer,
Yes.
look at the next one.
Toyota Ipsum.
It was
It's
the
Greek.
Greeking Corolla. It was
They ran out of
the
time.
placeholder Corolla. Oh my god.
And then there's a Tacoma, which I'm sure is fine.
Okay, Vector V M12.
It's a Vector M12, so this is... Wait, if you ever know the backstory of Vector, it was super weird. It was a lot like Proton. Shut up. It was a lot like Proton, but Vector got bought by Malaysians, and they also owned Lamborghini. and it was like Mega Tech or Mega, and they were like, we're gonna fuse the Vector.
I couldn't be bothered.
Shut up. We saw the Vector at Radwood in LA.
I hated it.
Shut up. So,
He's at the end of the podcast. I can tell.
I know.
He's getting grumpy.
It's so annoying. So the Vector, a company bought them, and they bought Lamborghini. They said, "Hey, we're going to combine these two things and make the M12," which was basically Lamborghini guts on like a weird looking body with Miata front running lights.
Yeah.
And it was a giant.
I mean, I loved it, but I hated it.
I think they ended up making 10 M12s.
Not to give away the world domination plans, but when I started my shop, there was 3 or 4 shops in my home city that would actively compete with me. Now there are
that makes sense.
1.
Yeah.
And it's a couple of them didn't pay their taxes. Some have been bought from Malaysian corporations.
It makes sense.
They're so rich they don't really care.
Yeah.
They have the vested interest. They do this, they do that, and then just kind of let it rot on the vine. And it would be really nice to go home and start a shop. We're going to bring back the Australian supercar. It gives you the finger.
We're going to make Australia great again.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sounds like they're already doing that.
we haven't been great for a while, but our decline is slow. It's slow. We've got another 5 years of self-regret and loathing.
I'd hope for a slow decline. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That isn't great.
I think we're about ready to wrap up. I wanted to say we do have a caller. We had a caller with some inputs.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no.
We're gonna put this clip in right now.
Hello, and this is your good friend Daryl Cossey leaving y'all an email message. I listened to your podcast the other day while I was making meatballs, and I noticed that your friend on the radio called a plug-in hybrid vehicle a FEV, when in actuality it is pronounced PHEV. Y'all could avoid this confusion altogether by just selecting a vehicle with an internal combustion engine made in America. Thank you, and goodbye.
So there was Kevin,
That was
his grandpa.
yes,
Not
not my grandpa.
You thought it might be racist? Okay, that's pretty thematic, actually.
It doesn't count.
So,
He said you were smart. It's fine. He said you were smart. It's not racist if he said you were smart.
Isn't that a trope?
whatever.
I feel like that's a trope.
Anyway, all right. So I think we're about at the end of the show.
Thank
Chris
you.
is definitely done. But Jordan, thank you for being a guest. Do you have anything you'd like to promote? Tell us the name of your shop, the address, the website, the Instagram, whatever you got.
Oh, Jesus. All right, well, so yeah. The shop's Modern Aircooled. The Instagram's Modern Aircooled. The Facebook's Modern Aircooled. If you Google Modern Aircooled, you'll find us.
How can I remember that?
It's impossible.
Okay.
And then the scoop that you will have in your podcast is, after a number of marketing meetings I've had over the last couple of months, I really regret choosing that name. Because what I really want to do is service Cayennes and Panameras. Make more money. Not really doing that right now. So, yeah, that's where we're at.
That is a scoop.
Look us
That
up.
is a scoop.
I will repeat my regret to anyone that calls up for a Panamera service. That's included. It's fun. It's free.
That's specialized,
Fantastic.
if we're really honest. Anyways, Jordan, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you
It was
so
a pleasure.
much.
It was a pleasure indeed, Kevin. Shall we end this?
I think that's a podcast.
Okay, it's a podcast, and good night, all.
Yes. Bye.